All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to a brand new episode 986, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening to the show, watching it on YouTube, however you consume Talking Buffalo. I appreciate you guys very, very much. Today's episode is presented by Sunny Reds, 1531 Aber Road, just minutes away from Highmark Stadium. Some of the very best wings, also some of the best pizza, brick oven pizza, by the way, you're going to get anywhere in Western New York. Great drinks, great vibe. Love going there. The crowd is always fun. The bartenders there are really cool. It truly, legitimately is one of my very favorite spots in all of Western New York. If you have not yet been there to eat, to drink, to hang out, whatever, go stop up. Sunny Reds, 1531 Aber Road. Tell them Talking Buffalo sent you. All right, today's episode is one of our Podbag episodes. I love these. They are interactive. These are the episodes where you control the narrative, the topics, your questions, your comments, your takes. I get to as many of them as I possibly can today. Some of these are pulled from the Talking Buffalo YouTube channel. Some were tweeted at me. A couple even emailed to me. And like I said, you control all these narratives and I respond to them. I love these because it's a great way to keep you involved with what is discussed on Talking Buffalo. I'll say this too, as usual, pretty much Buffalo Bills dominated. Maybe as the offseason moves along, it'll start to balance out a little bit more, but primarily these are all Buffalo Bills questions, comments, and takes. Although I do have one Sabres one mix in here, and I actually got a pretty interesting question. Somebody emailed me and asked me about the city of Buffalo for somebody who doesn't live here and visits the town. Like, what would be your ideal weekend? I'll get to that in just a few, and I would love to hear your input on that as well. So all that coming up here in just a quick second. Before that, though, I just want to let you know, for people who are, everyday listeners to this show, there's going to be some cool stuff coming down the chute pretty damn soon. Right now, we're in mid-February. Quite literally, it is starting to snow outside hard. And I've made it no secret. I'm soft. I hate winter. I love Buffalo. I truly do. But I hate the winters with a passion. I hibernate every year, especially around this time of year after the holidays. And I pretty much don't go out unless I have to until it gets to be around St. Patrick's Day season. So still got a couple weeks left for me. I work from home. My primary job is to work from home. This podcast, I got a home studio here, so I am home almost all the time. If you follow the show regularly, you know I do a lot of live shows, get out to different places, but not so much right now. But that's going to change soon. That's my whole point of what I'm saying. That is going to change soon. You're going to start to see a lot more live shows with special guests. You're going to start to see brand new content that I actually haven't really done with any consistency on the show before. I'm going to start doing some wing reviews. You'll see videos of them. Also on the audio side, if people listen as opposed to watching, that'll be available. I'm going to sit down with some local Buffalo business owners, have some fun conversations with them, some entertainment related stuff. All those things I really look forward to sinking my teeth into and providing for you beyond just the everyday Bills talk and occasional Sabres talk. Don't get me wrong. I love doing that. I'm not naive. I know it's the meat and potatoes of the show, and it always will be. But I strive to do more things to make this show stand out and be a little more unique. So whether it's music stuff, entertainment, food, all kinds of things like that, stay tuned because I'm really going to start doing a lot more content. I got some new gear that's easily transportable, so I can go pretty much anywhere and shoot and record some content. So look for that stuff. Also, Wednesday, March 5th, that'll be episode number 1000 of Talking Buffalo. Not going to say who I'm going to have with me, but I am going to have a live show. It's going to be at Sunny Reds, 1531 Aber Road. And I'm going to have a guest or two with me to help kind of ring that in and celebrate 1,000 episodes, something I'm quite obviously very proud of. Also, next week, February 18th episode, it's going to be the 7-year anniversary of Talking Buffalo. just time flies, man. Sometimes it's hard to believe. I started this podcast. It was called Moranalytics Podcast at first, originally, but next week will be 7 years. So I'm excited about a lot of things to be able to bring to you. Now, as for today, like I said, a Podbag episode. And without further ado, let's just dive in because there are some really good ones that I want to get to. I'll start with Liam Markson, who says James Cook is putting 15 million per year on his Instagram. Let's just say he's serious. Is that going to happen here being Buffalo? Should the Bills look to trade him now instead of losing him for nothing next season? All right, Liam, thank you for that. Look, number one, let's get this out of the way right now. I predict in the coming days or maybe even weeks, you're going to see a lot of trade talk or rumors or gossip involving James Cook. Make no mistake about it, okay? That is going to be social media driven, maybe a little bit content creator driven, maybe even a little sprinkle of media driven. But, and look, never say never too. You never know what could happen. But I will come as close to saying never as possible when it comes to James Cook getting traded this offseason. That ain't happening. That's not happening. If they of course being the Buffalo Bills, if they want to work out an extension with James Cook, but they can't, let's just say James Cook is hell-bent on making X amount of dollars, according to his IG, which, by the way, in fairness, this is James Cook putting this on his IG. This isn't someone speculating for him. This apparently is himself saying 15 million per, which we all know what that means. But let's just say the Bills are looking to get an extension with James Cook, but they can't get it done. He's not budging off that number. This is what he thinks he's going to be worth or what he's worth now. And the Bills say, well, we ain't doing that shit. If that is what it came to, James Cook plays out the last season of his contract, which will be coming up here in 2025. And that's around 5.5 million. And then he hits the open market in 2026. That's the obvious, most likely scenario if the Bills can't work out an extension now. But you can also add a wrinkle to that. Theoretically, very feasibly, in fact, the Bills could say, all right, well, you're going to play out this next season, and we'll see what happens at the end of next year. Then James Cook goes out. He stays healthy. He shows out. He balls out. He has another really good year, and he's set to be a free agent. But that's where the franchise tag comes, and that's something that Brandon Beane, and just historically, the Buffalo Bills rarely ever do. But it is an option. The Bills could say, you know what? We're not ready to lose this guy quite yet. I want to get another year out of him at a premium price. So the Bills, at the end of next season, they could franchise tag him. Probably looking at around the way it's trending, about $14 million to put a tag on him for one season. Again, that's an option, but that's never ideal. First of all, the player's always unhappy. Secondly, that cap number, if you franchise tag somebody and you don't work out a long-term extension with him, that $14 million is all on the cap for 2026. You really don't want to see that with a running back, of course. But it is an option. And sometimes you use the franchise tag. What that does is buy you time. Like, he plays out the season. His worth is not diminished from what it is right now. You can't work out something before the franchise tag period. Well, you slap that tag on him, and then you continue to work out a long-term deal. But now you have time with the $14 million that he gets in 2026. If it comes through and plays out that way, as your backup option. So that's certainly on the table. It's certainly on the table. In terms of the money that James Cook allegedly is looking for right now, $15 million per. If you don't know this, Christian McCaffrey is literally the only running back in the NFL right now who is averaging over $15 million a year. He's averaging $19 million. Guys who are close to that, and it's a very small list. Jonathan Taylor is averaging $14 million a year right now. Saquon Barkley, $12.6 million. Which, by the way, it seems like a pretty good bargain for the Eagles right now anyway, doesn't it? Alvin Kamara, that team just loves spending money, $12.25 million. And then Josh Jacobs with Green Bay, $12 million. That's it. That's your whole list. That's the only people in the NFL running backs who are above north right now of 10 million per year. McCaffrey, Taylor, Barkley, Kamara, Jacobs. That's it. That's the list. I can see the Bills right now, personally, and it's just my opinion. I have no inside information whatsoever. This is just me thinking, speculating, whatever you want to call it. I can see the Bills right now being willing to go to that 10 to 13 million range. Like that is on par with the Kamara, the Jacobs, the Barkley, even. It's on par with that. It's a couple million more than Joe Mixon or James Carter, David Montgomery from Detroit, Chuba Hubbard who just signed with Carolina or got an extension, I should say. None of them are making quite 10. They're around 9, 8.5 million. I can see James Cook getting 10 to 13. And I think that would be a reasonable price for the Bills to pay. I'll say this too about James Cook. He does have a lot going for him. You know, if you want to pound the table that, hey, he could be an exception as a running back and he should get more than most of these other running backs, I think you have a good case. I think he has a very strong case. Now, for starters, he's still pretty young. You know, Jacob, some of these guys that I just mentioned, they're between, 27, 28, even up to like around 30 years old. With James Cook, or 29 years old at least. James Cook's only going into his age 26 season. He's going to be turned 26 a couple weeks into this coming regular season. So he's still relatively young. And, what might go against him in a way statistically because he's not putting up some of the eye-popping numbers in terms of rushing yards or receptions or receiving yards because he's not playing. He's not an every down back right now. And in some ways that could go against him, but in other ways that could go for him. The wear and tear, a lot of tread on those tires. James Cook only has 533 carries so far in the NFL through 3 full seasons. I think that benefits him a lot. And I think that the timing benefits him a lot. Timing is everything. And the salary cap continues to go up. And he is an ascending star player. And he's becoming one as it gets close to that proverbial payday. Look at 16 rushing touchdowns. I feel like, he might not have had the rushing yards this past year, but he really put everything together. He's always been a guy who could hit the home run coming out of the backfield. They came out of college as a guy who kind of a change of pace back almost, who can catch the ball out of the backfield, but he has really developed into a very, very good starting NFL, if necessary, cowbell running back, although he hasn't been one, but he could get the tough yards. He's got great vision. He's got great patience. He squares up by contact. He delivers the blow as much as he receives it. And he's got that straight up speed to bounce one outside and bam, he's gone. We saw it a couple times this past season. I think he's a special player, and I still think that he is getting better. And I'll say this too about the players, not just him, but any player in his position. This is the NFL, man. Get paid when you can. Because this ain't like hockey or the NBA or Major League Baseball. Those 3 sports, you sign your name on that contract, you're getting every single penny. In the NFL, what we see as numbers often don't tell the whole story. Sometimes they don't really much matter at all. You're only getting what you're guaranteed. So if you get a $30 million contract and 16 of it is guaranteed, you may not see much more than 16 of that. Quite often, you don't see all 30, that's for sure. So get paid in the NFL when you got the opportunity. I'll never fault players, especially the way this sports salary cap is structured. I would never fault players for trying to go out and get theirs when they can. It kind of feels to me like a little bit of a Tremaine Edmonds situation. Like the year before Tremaine Edmonds went into his 5th year, it was like, do you want to extend him? You want to work out this deal after his 4th year? The Bills didn't. Then he goes out, and I thought he had the best season of his career, year 5. The Bills were not going to tag him. He hits the open market. The Bills certainly were interested. They would have loved to bring Tremaine Edmonds back, but the numbers just didn't work. Once he hit that open market, it only takes one team. Bam, Chicago throws a shitload of money at him. He's gone. And he's gone. I kind of feel like that could be the situation potentially with James Cook if you let things play out. Like if I'm Brandon Beane right now, and I know I really, I think James Cook could be my guy for the next 3 to 4 years at least. I'm gonna try to sign him. I'm gonna work really hard on trying to extend him right now during this off season. Which is funny because you go through that list of players that 2026 Bills free agent class with him and Bernard and Christian Benford, potentially Groot, all these guys who are due to be free agents next year. And James Cook kind of Khalil Shakir kind of felt he was at the bottom of the priority list. I don't feel that way anymore. What I saw last season, he's a big, big part of this Bills offense. A big reason why it was as good as it was last year. One just Josh Allen, folks. James Cook had a nice role in that as well. So if you could work something out with him, especially if you can have, you got Ray Davis, you drafted him, but everybody's like, oh, go trade James Cook. Let him walk. It's Ray Davis season. Yeah, I think Ray Davis has a good role in this football team, and maybe it increases some. But even if the workload remains the same for James Cook throughout his entire Bills career, I still think that getting him done right now should be a priority. Whether that happens or not, though, I wouldn't worry about it too much right now for 2025 because he's not going anywhere. I don't see him getting traded. I just don't see that happening. So I'm not worried right now, but it definitely could be worrisome for beyond this season. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll start to get through these a little more rapidly after the break. Really good one coming up about Von Miller. A fun question, too, about any player in the NFL joining the Buffalo Bills. A fun little exercise. We'll get your input on that. Plenty more coming up right after this quick break. All right, I am back here with our weekly Podbag episode, the episode where you control the narrative, your questions, your comments, your takes, mostly Buffalo Bills here again today. Let's move on here. At Drew Does Dallas 2 says, what to do with Von Miller seems to be a big question mark. One thing for sure is he's not playing at almost his $24 million cap hit. Should the Bills restructure him, get him to take another pay cut with incentives, or cut him all together? I thought he played pretty well last year. Didn't look washed up. All right, Drew, thank you. Yeah, he did play reasonably well last year. I thought he started the season really well. Got suspended, tailed off a little bit, but still reasonably well. He finished the season with 6 sacks. That last one against the Patriots in his little cup of coffee actually earned him a $1.5 million bonus. That was pretty cool. He did have a huge fumble return in the playoffs against the Ravens as well. So it's not like the guy was completely washed. He's not washed, okay? But that said, I'm moving on from Von Miller right now, this offseason and soon. And I'm doing it entirely at this point. No pay cuts, no restructure, no nothing else. To me, it's time to say goodbye to Von Miller. And here's why. Guys like Greg Rizzo is going in the year 5. Ed Oliver, a 2019 draft pick, and AJ Epinesa, 2020, I think, second round draft pick or whatever he was, 2020, 2021. They're what they are at this point. And they're good to very good players. Well, at least Groot and Oliver for sure. Epinesa's fine. He's adequate, right? They are what they are, though. They haven't gotten the Bills over the hump, that front four in the playoffs against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're not going to, okay? They're not getting over that hump with those 3 guys and Von Miller. They're just not. At this point, now, let me back that up just a second. When Von Miller was signed, that's what he was brought here for, to get them over the hump. And in fairness to Brandon Beane and to Von Miller, before he tore his ACL, he certainly looked like that guy. But then he tore his ACL. It's unfortunate, but it happens. At this point, he's just not that guy. He's not. And that's not debatable to me either. This is where this position, the Bills Brandon Beane must go big fish hunting. Now, if they land a big fish via trade, and we know the big names now, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, maybe Trey Hendrickson, hell, maybe even Micah Parsons. You're hearing a couple of little whispers about him. You could go swing a big-ass trade for one of those guys. or you go to free agency, and let's just say you go get Khalil Mack. Let's just go say you go get Josh Sweat, who looked like the second coming of Lawrence Taylor and Michael Strahan combined in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs just this past week. He cashes in. Maybe Hassan Reddick. I talked about him just on the show yesterday. He didn't do shit with the Jets last year because he didn't want to be there. He didn't get that contract. He was checked out completely. But that's a guy who's had 50 and a half sacks over the last 4 years prior to that. You go get any of those guys. Pick one. Doesn't matter which one. All right. Where's that leave Von Miller? Where does that leave Von Miller? And let's say even if you get him to take an $8 to $9 million pay cut, all right, and then he's playing next season at only $8 or $9 million, okay? Let's just say that. He's your fourth, maybe even your fifth defensive end. It just seems dumb to pay any real resource to a guy who's going to be your fourth or fifth defensive end like that. It just feels dumb to me. And you look at his usage, and this should tell you the whole story. So near the end of the year, his reps just seem to go down for a variety of reasons, but his reps go down, and we kept saying, well, they're ramping him up for the playoffs. They want him ready to go. He only played one series, got his sack against the Patriots, and rested the rest of the game in the season finale. They're ramping him up for the playoffs. Well, you get to the playoffs, and then you get to the AFC divisional game. He only played 17 snaps against the Ravens. They win. You get to the AFC championship game. He only played 16 snaps against the Chiefs. That is less than 30% of the snaps in each of those games. Not any game. All right, this ain't the Titans in week 8 or the Browns in week 14. This is the freaking playoffs, man. This is the divisional round and AFC championship game. And your guy who's, even after a pay cut, is making a shitload of money, plays in less than 30% of the snaps in each of those games. If Von Miller is that important to the present of the team, let alone the future, why the hell is his snap count at under 30%? It just doesn't make it make sense, because it doesn't. So if I'm the Bills right now, I'm taking that. I'm going to take my medicine right now too. Now you could cut him post June 1st, less dead money, a lot more cap savings, but you don't see that money till June 1st. Not really going to help you that much over the course of the next few months, I don't think anyway. But take your medicine now. If you cut Von Miller tomorrow, you're going to eat 15.4 dead million. 15.4 million dead cap, I'm sorry. And you're only going to save 8.4. I shouldn't say only, because that's my point. 8.4 million is still a lot of money. That is money that you can go and you can sign pretty much anyone you want in free agency, or hell, even make a trade, as long as you get an extension with that trade, and you can structure that deal where that new guy is going to have a salary cap hit that's going to be lower for 2025 than the money that you saved just by cutting Von Miller. And hell, man, you still got fifth-round pick Javon Sullivan. He can still be that fourth or fifth defensive end in this situation at edge. He can rush the passer, and maybe he don't kill you otherwise. That's what development's all about, right? But hell, if he's going to get 10 to 18 snaps per game, his cap hit's barely $1 million. To me, it's a no-brainer. The only way it's not a no-brainer is if you plan on keeping Von Miller and you're just going to draft an edge and you're going to develop an edge for another year and then say goodbye. To me, that's almost, and never guarantee, a rookie can come in and have a 10-sack season. Don't really happen much, though, does it? But assuming that doesn't happen and your move is to keep Von Miller and you only go get a AJ Epinesa or maybe at best a Leonard Floyd type, you're not getting over the hump against the Kansas City Chiefs. Getting home with 4 pass rushers anyway, if Von Miller is an important part. Simple as that. Jeremy from Boise, this is a quick little detour from Bill stuff, but I love this question. Actually, normally I would have it at the end, but I actually wanted to move this up because I love this. Love to hear your input too, Buffalonians. Jeremy from Boise says, to your listeners who have never been to Buffalo, what would be your itinerary for someone who wanted to visit the city for a weekend? What time of year? And what would you have them do, see, experience? Love that. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Really cool. My first instinct was, and this is a tough question to answer, I'll tell you why. Because my first instinct was Well, early fall, September, and I want a Bills related weekend. Like I'm going to give you the whole Bills experience. Saturday, we're going to go and we're going to find every big, Bills pregame party that there is. We're going to get out really early. We're going to go spend Sunday tailgating, and then we're going to go watch the game. That's like the ultimate Buffalo Bills, Western New York experience, right? Well, my wife made a really good point. When is if it's somebody who's not much of a sports fan or a Bills fan at all? Then it kind of that doesn't really work then, right? So it's a tough question to answer because it depends. Is that person a sports fan? What are their hobbies? What do they generally like? How old are they? Things like that. Okay. So I understand that. So there's no perfect answer, but we'll take off the Bills. We'll take them off the table. All right. We'll just take them. We'll assume that they're not a big Bills fan or the big football fan. They don't want to go to the game. For me, it's definitely the earlier part of summer, like maybe even late spring, early summer, anytime May through July is just the best. That's what makes Buffalo the best. Like right now, I hate my life because I barely want to go outside. In fact, it's literally snowing out behind me significantly hard here on a late Wednesday afternoon. But man, oh man, that May, June, July in Buffalo is absolutely elite. Um, Things like Shays are awesome, like the art gallery is really nice, but I also feel like most cities have at least similar things, so I'm not sure that that's really anything unique about it. Like you can go to a theater or any city, you can go to most cities anyway, probably have a decent art gallery, as at least. Buffalo's kind of defined in a way by food. I think food's important, obviously wings. So you're gonna have wings twice on my itinerary for sure. You're gonna go to Bar Bill because you're gonna get not only what a lot of people perceive as the best wings, but you're also going to get beef on weck, which is a big thing in Buffalo. So you can get wings and weck, top of the line, elite at the same place. So we're definitely going to Bar Bill. And I'd also would hit up 911 Tavern because obviously, I mean, I think they have the best wings in the world. But even if you don't consider them the best in the world, they're really good. But even more than the wings, what I love about 911 is it exudes the character of Buffalo, like how Buffalo fun is defined. It is a shithole dive bar, and no disrespect to them, but that's what it is. It's an old bar. The bathroom's about as big as this table right now that I have that I'm podcasting on. It's cash only. There's just so many little things that just screams divey bar in Buffalo, South Buffalo to be exact, that I'd want somebody to experience that because I feel like in a lot of ways that is kind of unique. I would have them down whatever weekend the Allentown Art Festival. I think that would be a great weekend to have. You go to the Allentown Art Festival. There's so much fun things to do there. Eat, go downtown. Maybe you catch a great lawn fete somewhere that same night too, like one of the neighborhood lawn fates. Lawn fates in Buffalo are huge in the summer. And then I'd also make sure that they hit up breweries because breweries are on the rise in Buffalo. Resurgence, Big Ditch, so many of them now popping up around that Buffalo, Larkin area. So that probably would be it. Allentown Art Festival, where there's a lawn fete that night, breweries, and obviously the food. I think that would be a perfect weekend. I like that question. That was kind of fun. At Tamarine for you says, what are the chances Brandon Beane brings back Amari Cooper next season and should he? Chances are low, I think. I don't know. My gut tells me chances are low and they should be low. Probably not. Look, here's the deal, man. You got Khalil Shakir. You got Curtis Samuel, who came on last year. You signed him to a multi-year deal. He's going to be back. And you got Keon Coleman, your first pick of the draft last year. Those should be your top three receivers right now. They're taking up a lot of those snaps. 2-3 receiver sets. They're going to be out there a lot. Matt Collins, assuming the Bills resign him, which I think he will be a pretty high priority. He's your fourth receiver. He's a good blocker. He does a lot of things pretty well. So you got all those guys. Cooper played like 50% and most in this offense, if that, and he's aging. So what's that worth to you? It's certainly not worth $15 million a year. Hell, I don't even think it's worth $10 million a year. at this point. You're going to go spend Amari Cooper money. You better go get a guy who you're going to put out there minimum 65 to 80% of the offensive snaps. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense money-wise for me. He does some things well. I love Amari Cooper. I think he's got a great attitude. Put it this way. You could sell me on being happy that he's back. That's for sure. I'm not going to be mad if the Bills re-sign him. I just don't think that's the proper allocation of financial resources to bring back Amari Cooper. Not at $15 million a year, or if it's even close to that. Go get me a speedy guy. Go get me a guy who's really good at separating, a skill set that the Bills don't have enough of right now, and maybe go get him on a prove-it deal for 1 year. I don't know if it's going to be a prove-it deal. I don't know what he proved with Kansas City, but I know a name floating around already is Hollywood Brown. There's reports that Josh Allen has said that he would like to play with Hollywood Brown. On the surface, you're going to pay $8, $9, $10 million for a guy for 1 year. That feels like a better allocation of sources or resources to me than Amari Cooper. I like Amari Cooper. I won't be mad if they bring him back. I just don't think it makes that much sense compared to other things that they should be spending their money on and that they need to do more. Jim O'Shea's says, do you feel that the 2024 Bills showed us that the passing game can work without having any sort of number one receiver when it matters? Obviously, the offense looked good for a lot of the season, but when we needed it most, no one can make a play. Is that missing big talent piece the biggest problem? Or was it Joe Brady's inability to scheme up more when it counted most? Pretty loaded question. I like that. Thank you for that, too. I think it's a little bit of both. But rather than take a huge shot at a big money weapon or using your first round draft pick on a receiver, for me, it's, can you count on Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman both making big strides in 2025? You better be able to count on that. Those have been your first pick the last 2 years. If I'm Brandon Beane, I'm saying to myself right now, Keon Coleman was a rookie who got hurt during his rookie season and didn't come back as effectively. And Brandon Beane literally said that during a press conference. Dalton Kincaid apparently fought through a lot of injuries with his knee, and he was not 100%. Dawson Knox went to bat for him and said that was the case. So you got two guys who had kind of like injury-riddled seasons, or at least injuries affected their season. You damn best be able to count on them to make bigger strides in 2025. Kincaid should have made that catch in the Chiefs game, period. He needs to make it. No excuses, no nothing. And if he makes that catch, maybe the Buffalo Bills, we're singing a different tune right now. Maybe we watched the Buffalo Bills play against the Philadelphia Eagles this past week. Got to make that catch, period. But in terms of the offense, you asked if it can work. Yeah, it can work. They're the number one scoring team in the NFL this year, including the playoffs, and they didn't even play in the last game in the Super Bowl. They showed it could work. They ran up. They got a lot of points against a lot of teams, bad teams during the regular season, good teams during the regular season. And for me, most impressively, they put up points in the playoffs. Look, they scored 31 on Denver in the playoffs. They scored 27 on Denver or Baltimore in the playoffs. And he scored 29 on Kansas City. Despite mistakes, they still scored 29 points in the playoffs. Those are three great defenses. Denver, Baltimore, Kansas City. And you scored 31, 27, 29. You got to win those games. I mean, they won two of them. They didn't win the last one, right? So, yeah, it could work. And it's in terms of, you mentioned Joe Brady. I'm glad you did, because as much as, look, again, Dalton Kincaid, he was the problem because he dropped the ball. Keon Coleman just wasn't a factor. Who knows how much the wrist, still bothered him, or just his inability to get past that, which may be a little bit concerning. But regardless, Joe Brady does deserve some criticism. Like, this offense, as good as it was, and as good as it was to score 29 against the Chiefs on the road, they should have scored 36 or more. I do think Joe Brady needs to be better in these big games. I think Joe Brady tightened it up too much in the playoffs, especially against the Chiefs. No wrinkles at the end. Nothing you haven't seen before. No jet sweeps. No figuring out early. Shit, the Chiefs are selling out to stop this tush push to the left. Let's go to the right. Let's do something else, anything else different. Let's make James Cook a little more of a weapon out of the backfield. Let's get him more touches because the Chiefs don't have an answer for him. So I do think Joe Brady deserves criticism. I think he tightened it up too much. No wrinkles at the end. And I think he needs to be better. But all in all, I don't need to go out and pull some kind of monster trade or some big, even if he's not going to hit the market anyway, but even if he did, I don't want T. Higgins. The Bills don't need T. Higgins. His offense is plenty good without him. At Barnstable 11, feels like a deep draft, especially for defensive tackle. How confident are you that Brandon Beane will score big with a defensive line or two in this draft? His track record there isn't great. I'm confident that he's not going to stop using valuable picks on the defensive line. Just because it hasn't worked before, it hasn't been great before, you can't stop knocking at that door. It's just too important. There are a handful of, or a trio, I should say, of defensive tackles as I'm starting to get into draft study a little bit here and there. But like Kenneth Grant from Michigan, Tyleik Williams from Ohio State, TJ Sanders from South Carolina, those would all be great late first round defensive tackles. Man, I'd be happy with any of them. But you got to be careful. You got to be careful. You can't draft for need at the top all the time. You take the best players. And I don't think Brandon Beane has done that, man. I think Brandon Beane has drafted for need a little bit too much at the top in recent years. And doing that can land you a guy like Kyrie Elam because you wanted McDuffie, but the Chiefs jump you. And then you just take the next corner, Kyrie Elam, instead of another positional player. That didn't work out. You wanted, you lost to the Chiefs. You want to redo the defensive line. You take Gruden in the first round, that's fine. But you come back, you want to double dip, and you take Boogie Basham. Not a good pick. Need picks, it felt like. Kincaid, we'll call him a weapon. The Bills needed a receiver. That's who they took. This past year with the draft, Keon Coleman. The Bills needed a receiver. They lost Davis. They lost Diggs. He was going to take a receiver with that first pick, no matter who was on the board. More on that, by the way, in just a quick second here. But I think it's very likely that two of the first four Bills picks this year are defensive line. And I think defensive tackle should absolutely be that spot. Get a defensive tackle in the first round. Like my ultimate Brandon Beane successful offseason consists of going to get a game-changing, impactful veteran edge rusher now, and then drafting a first-round defensive tackle, assuming it's one of the three or four guys that you think are really worth a first-round pick. You get them, you let them learn for a little bit behind DaQuan Jones, even if it's just for a little bit, if DaQuan Jones even ends up staying on this team, which I don't think, nor should be necessarily a lock, but that's another story off for another day. But yeah, I don't think by any means Brandon Beane's going to shy away from going high on draft picks with the defensive line because it hasn't worked out the best before. Teddy Bears, S85. The Bills' front four was a big problem against Kansas City, but so was the secondary. Douglas and Hamlin are both free agents, and I'm sure they were good enough anyway. How do you see Beane making the secondary better in the offseason? Hold on one second. I had to get a quick drink here. All right, Teddy, thank you for that, man. Look, the Bills' front four was definitely a problem against Kansas City, but so was the secondary, like you said. Here's the thing, though. 3/4 of the secondary is going to be back. Like, Christian Benford's a lock. Taylor Rapp is a lock. And I think Cole Bishop is going to take the reins in year two, as he should. You draft a guy in the second round with the vision of him becoming a starter. He might have been one last year right off the bat if he didn't get hurt in training camp, but he didn't. Tamar Hamlin took over, and it just didn't work out. But we saw him come on and play a lot more at the end of the year. Saw him start against the Chiefs. I think Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp are your starting safeties. And Cole Bishop's got, he's got a pretty high ceiling. He's got a lot of potential. So there's 3/4 of your secondary. But they need a CB2. No question about it. There's also no question it's not Kyrie Elam. Not going to be him. And I don't think should be Russell Douglas either. I like Russell Douglas. It was a good trade that the Bills made for him. I thought he was really good last year, but I think this year, a little bit older. I think the knee was an issue. He was banged up a little bit. He was not the same player near the end of this year that he was last year or even early in this season. So I think quarterback or corner is a pretty sneaky need, actually. It wouldn't shock me to take a long look at DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward or maybe Carlton Davis III, Paulson Adebu from the Saints. That might be a name to keep an eye on. Possibly they're going to do something, and I think it should be a veteran move. Draft a corner as well. Christian Bedford's going in with his last year, so draft a corner. Hell, it could even be 30. We just talked about best player over need. If the top 3 or 4 defensive tackles that you thought were going to be in your range, if they all go before 30, and there's a really good corner sitting there at 30, you better take them. Don't take the 5th defensive tackle when you like the corner. You got a higher grade out of more, but it was a bigger need. So maybe you draft a corner, if not in the first round, somewhere in those first 3, 4 picks, and go get a veteran. But that's a pretty sneaky need right now. We're all talking about edge. CB2 is a pretty sneaky need for the Bills. From CB4, it's too bad the Bills didn't draft Cooper Dejean. Instead of Keon Coleman, Dejean was in the first round in a lot of expert mocks, and now it's easy to see why. I feel like if the Bills had Dejean instead of Coleman, they would have played in the Super Bowl. Well, it's easy to have revisionist history, and so it's clear. I was high on Cooper Dejean too. I liked him a lot. I remember last year during mock draft season talking about him with Bruce Nolan, talking about him a little bit with Anthony Prohaska over at Cover One. Very high on him. A lot of teams, I would say, who drafted in the 20s wish, they could do it over right now, and they probably would have taken Cooper Dejean as well. It's just like the Worthy trade, though. You can't judge a trade by 1 year. You just can't do it. It's unfair to Keon Coleman, who was drafted by the Buffalo Bills and brought along slowly because, in part at least, the Bills had that luxury. The Bills, with the way the offense is being built or was built last year, and having Matt Collins as a good run blocker and giving Samuel money and having Khalil Shakir, I don't think Keon Coleman was brought here to play 85% of the snaps and be a star in year one. So it's a little bit, plus he got hurt. So it's a little bit unfair to him. He still may become a really, really good number 2 wide receiver for the Bills for years to come, which to me, if he becomes a solid number 2, I saw someone else say this on social media, a good comparison, a Robert Woods. To me, it's a great value. It's a great value, especially because you traded down and got a 3rd round pick too. That said, it was tough to see 2 teams playing the Super Bowl. Kansas City on offense, their best weapon in that game far and away was Xavier Worthy. And then on the other side with Philly, Cooper Dejean made the play that busted that game wide open for Philly. And those are 2 guys that the Bills could have had, 2 guys that the Bills were very much linked to during draft season last year. But yeah, man, you got to give it some time. Jack Hand says, this could be an entire episode. I'm going to bring this conversation up with Joe from Queens on Sunday we'll elaborate on a little more, but I'll get through this quickly because we're running out of time here. Jack Hand said, if you could take one player, any player from any team in the NFL right now and put him on the 2025 Buffalo Bills going forward, who would it be? I love this question. It's never going to happen, but it is a fun exercise. I actually threw this up on my Twitter and a lot of different responses. Justin Jefferson led the way for sure. And I would give strong consideration, very strong consideration to Justin Jefferson. Patrick Surtain's another one I would consider. Somebody who the Bills may realistically be in the market to go get. Myles Garrett would literally be in the conversation for me as well. But for me, personally, and this is a completely subjective answer, of course, and question, but I would go with Jalen Carter from the Eagles. 6'3", 314 pounds, 2nd team All-Pro this year. He's an animal. He is an animal at defensive tackle, and the dude is just 23 years old. Sick player, man. God, I'd love to have him on the Buffalo Bills. And again, a lot of people said Jefferson, and there's no real wrong answer between him or Carter, but I'll say this with respect to Justin Jefferson, who is the best wide receiver in the NFL. And holy shit, would him being on the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen be fun and productive to see? But I feel like this Jefferson here on this team would diminish Khalil Shakir a little bit. It would diminish Dalton Kincaid's role a little bit. It would diminish Keon Coleman's role a little bit. And I know those guys didn't have great seasons this year, at least Kincaid and Keon. But again, you're counting on them to grow and ascend as they get along further in their careers, right? Maybe even James Cook, that diminishes him a little bit as well. I feel like you get Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs 2020 to 2023 all over again, but on steroids because Justin Jefferson is literally the best receiver in the NFL. But Carter in himself is an elite player, just like Justin Jefferson. But the difference between them two for me and why I went with Carter is Carter's presence on that defensive line is not just what he does. It's not just replacing DaQuan Jones with Carter. It's what he does for the guys around him. Carter on this defensive line is elevating Ed Oliver. That dude ain't going to know what a double team is anymore, right? He's elevating AJ Epinesa. He's elevating Greg Rizzo. Hell, he's elevating the entire front seven for the Buffalo Bills. He's making players around him better. The Bills' offense is already near the best in the NFL. How much higher can you go? How much higher can you go? You're switching philosophies by everybody eats going, back to peak Stephon Diggs. And Jefferson would be great, but this offense to me is already there. This offense could use another receiver. I'd love another receiver, but this offense is championship caliber with an MVP quarterback as it stands. This is not a championship caliber defensive line. I feel like Oliver and Greg Rizzo, two important players, would be brought along a lot further by having with them an absolute dominant, game-changing, impactful defensive tackle. And that's exactly what Jalen Carter is. All right, last one for today. At reserved 4S Sam. I saved the Sabres for last because they are in last. That's what they deserve. It's very clear you just hate the Buffalo Sabres. What could this team do between now and the rest of the season to get you to back off them even just a little bit? Fire Kevin Adams. That's it. That's it. That's the story. Fire Kevin Adams, the end. He's in year 5 as his general manager now, okay? All these moves, all these high draft picks, and you're dead ass last in the East. Dead ass last. Dead as a doornail for yet another season. You're going to overtake the New York Jets and extend the longest playoff drought in all of sports. You couldn't make Jack Eichel work, couldn't make him want to stay here. You couldn't make Sam Reinhart work. You couldn't make him want to stay here. Both of them get traded. They're both Stanley Cup MVP caliber studs now, okay? No one around the league respects you. You are the worst salesman. You can't get anyone to want to, waive a no trade to come to Buffalo. You are a small fish in a big pond, and you don't know how to swim. 2 years ago, this team kind of struck lightning, and they finished 2 points away from a playoff game. 2 years later, they are dead last in the Eastern Conference. They are 4th worst in the National Hockey League. And there's people out there that think that it's not the general manager's fault above all else. Like, what are we even doing here? What are we doing here? I refuse to take this organization seriously at all again at any point until they get a more experienced, proven hockey guy that people around the league will respect. And then people around the league might take this organization more seriously, Why should I take the Buffalo Sabres seriously when I guarantee you most other general managers and hockey people and even players around the league don't even take this organization seriously? Come on. Come on. I should have got you know what? Actually, good thing I did keep that for the end because then I get pissed off. I start thinking about this team, what it could have been, thinking about guys like Eichel and Reinhardt and just some of these other draft picks and some of these moves that could have been out there and just the way this team just plays and lifeless and a general manager who just is a stooge and it just bothers the shit out of me. So on that note, I am going to get out of here. This is a longer episode than I thought it would be, but those were some really good takes, comments, and questions from you guys. I appreciate it very much. I will be back one more episode for this week. Not quite sure where we're going with it. I will have a guest. Don't know what's going to be, but come back, find out tomorrow.